The moon was a graveyard of broken dreams, its surface littered with jagged rocks and the skeletal remains of ancient satellites. Cale Voss trudged through the gray dust, his boots crunching softly against the desolate terrain. His breath fogged up the visor of his battered helmet as he scanned the horizon. The air here wasn't breathable, but that didn't matter. There wasn't much air to begin with. This far-out moon orbiting a dying gas giant wasn't exactly prime real estate, but it was rich in salvageable tech for anyone desperate enough to risk their life for scraps. Cale fit the bill perfectly. Once a decorated soldier in Earth's unified fleet, he'd been cast aside after refusing orders during a botched mission years ago. Now he lived on the fringes, eking out a living by scavenging derelict ships and forgotten outposts. He wasn't proud of what he'd become, but survival had a way of erasing pride. Today, though, something felt different. His scanner had picked up an anomaly, a faint energy signature emanating from deep within a crater. Most would have written it off as interference or debris, but Cale had learned to trust his instincts. They were all he had left. As he descended into the shadowy depths of the crater, the source of the signal came into view. It wasn't human-made. Whatever this thing was, it gleamed like polished crystal under the dim light of the distant sun. Its edges shimmered unnaturally, almost as if they weren't solid at all. The ship, or whatever it was, looked like it had been torn apart during re-entry, its sleek frame now warped and scorched. Strange symbols etched into its hull pulsed faintly, emitting a low hum that vibrated through Cale's chest. Curiosity overruled caution. He approached cautiously, his plasma cutter gripped tightly in one hand. If this turned out to be some kind of trap, he wanted to be ready. But when he reached the wreckage, there was no sign of danger, only silence. That is, until he heard it. A voice, soft and trembling, barely audible over the hum of the alien craft. "Help, please." Cale froze, his heart pounding. Slowly, he followed the sound to a partially collapsed section of the ship. There, crumpled among shards of glowing metal, lay a figure unlike anything he'd ever seen. She, if she was even the right word, was humanoid, but her skin shimmered like liquid starlight, shifting colors with every shallow breath. Her hair floated around her head as though caught in zero gravity, despite the heavy pull of the moon's weak gravity. She wore tattered robes adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to glow faintly. Her eyes fluttered open, locking onto Cale's. They were vast, impossibly deep, filled with both pain and a quiet desperation. "Will you abandon me, human?" she whispered, her voice breaking mid-sentence. Before Cale could respond, her body went limp, collapsing into unconsciousness. For a moment, Cale just stood there, staring down at her. His mind raced with questions. Who, or what was she? Where had she come from? And why had fate dumped her here, of all places? More importantly, what was he supposed to do now? He glanced back toward his ship, parked several kilometers away. Taking her with him would slow him down, maybe even put him in danger. But leaving her behind, that wasn't an option either. Something about her, the vulnerability in her voice, the raw need in her gaze, it stirred something inside him he thought long dead. Hope. With a resigned sigh, Cale knelt beside her and carefully scooped her into his arms. She was lighter than expected, almost weightless, and her skin radiated warmth despite the freezing temperatures outside. As he carried her back toward his ship, the symbols on her forehead began to glow brighter, casting eerie shadows across the barren landscape. "What are you getting me into?" Cale muttered under his breath, though he already knew the answer. Whatever she was, wherever she came from, his life was about to change forever. Cale's ship, the Iron Petal *, was far from luxurious. Its walls were patched with mismatched panels, its engine groaned like an old man climbing stairs, and the air smelled faintly of burnt wiring. But it was home, or at least as close to a home as Cale had these days. He gently laid the alien woman on a makeshift cot in the cramped medical bay. tucking a thin thermal blanket around her shimmering form. Her breathing was shallow but steady, and the glowing symbols on her forehead pulsed rhythmically, casting soft light across the room. For hours, Kale sat by her side, watching her sleep. Every so often, she'd murmur something in a language he didn't understand. Soft, melodic tones that sounded more like music than speech. Though he couldn't comprehend the words, their meaning seemed clear enough. Fear, longing, hope. It was strange how easily he could read her emotions despite the vast differences between them. Maybe it was because they both knew what it felt like to be lost. When she finally stirred, Kale leaned closer, unsure if she'd even recognize him. Her eyes fluttered open, locking onto his face with the same intensity they'd shown back in the wreckage. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, hesitantly, she reached out a hand, her fingers brushing against his gloved palm. The touch sent a shiver down his spine. Not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. "Thank you," she said haltingly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You saved me." Kale blinked, startled. "You speak my language." She nodded weakly. "A little. Learned. Before I came here." Her gaze dropped, and for the first time, Kale noticed the sadness in her expression. Whatever journey had brought her to this desolate moon, it hadn't been easy. "I'm Kale," he said after a pause, pointing to himself. Then, gesturing toward her, he added, "And you are." Her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "Lyra," she replied softly. "Princess Lyra." Kale raised an eyebrow. "A princess, huh? Guess I should have bowed earlier." Despite herself, Lyra chuckled, a sound so delicate it made Kale feel oddly protective of her. But her laughter faded quickly, replaced by a shadow of pain. She winced, pressing a hand to her chest, as though trying to hold herself together. Concerned, Kale leaned forward. "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" Lyra shook her head, though her trembling hands told a different story. "I'll be fine," she murmured. "But I can't stay here long. They'll come looking for me." "They?" Kale asked sharply. "Who's they?" Before she could answer, the ship rocked violently, throwing Kale off balance. Alarms blared as warning lights flashed across the control panel. Outside, the once empty void was now filled with the ominous silhouettes of approaching ships. "What the hell is going on?" Kale muttered, rushing to the cockpit. Through the viewport, he saw 3 sleek vessels closing in fast, their hulls marked with insignias he didn't recognize. One of them fired a warning shot, narrowly missing the iron pedal asterisk. "They found me," Lyra whispered behind him, her voice tinged with dread. She gripped the edge of the doorframe, her knuckles white. "They won't stop until they take me back, or destroy me." Kale clenched his jaw, his mind racing. Whoever they weren't messing around. He glanced at Lyra, who looked smaller and more fragile than ever. Yet there was something else in her posture, a quiet determination that reminded him of himself during his soldier days. She wasn't just a frightened princess, she was someone fighting to survive. "We're not letting that happen," Kale said firmly, sliding into the pilot's seat. With practiced ease, he powered up the engines, ignoring the protests of the aging machinery. "Hold on tight, Lyra. This might get rough." As the enemy ships opened fire, Kale maneuvered the iron pedal asterisk, through a series of evasive twists and turns. The ship groaned under the strain, but it held together, for now. Beside him, Lyra clutched the armrests tightly, her glowing eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. "You really think we can escape them?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the chaos. Kale grinned grimly, his hand steady on the controls. "Let's just say I've gotten pretty good at running away." For the first time since meeting her, Lyra smiled, a real one this time, full of gratitude and trust. And in that moment, Kale realized something important. No matter where this journey took them, he wasn't about to let her go. The chase was relentless. Kale pushed the iron pedal asterisk to its limits, weaving through asteroid fields and dodging laser fire as the enemy ships pursued them with cold precision. The mercenaries weren't just skilled, they were ruthless. Every time Cal thought he'd shaken them, another volley of shots would narrowly miss his ship, sending sparks flying from overloaded shields. Lyra sat silently in the co-pilot's seat, her hands gripping the edges of the chair so tightly her knuckles glowed faintly beneath her shimmering skin. She hadn't said much since the pursuit began, but her presence alone seemed to weigh heavily on the air around them. Occasionally, she'd murmur something under her breath, words Cal couldn't understand but suspected were prayers or pleas to whatever gods her people believed in. "Who are these guys?" Cal shouted over the alarms blaring throughout the ship. "And why do they want you so badly?" Lyra hesitated before answering, her voice trembling slightly. "They're mercenaries hired by my brother," she admitted. "He doesn't want me alive." Cal glanced at her sharply, his grip tightening on the controls. "Your own brother? What did you do to piss him off?" "It's not what I did," Lyra replied, her gaze dropping to her lap. "It's what I am." She paused, then added quietly, "I carry a piece of my world within me, a fragment of our planet's spirit. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could be used to destroy everything." Cal frowned, trying to process her words. "So you're saying you're some kind of walking power source?" "In a way, yes," Lyra said, nodding. "But it comes at a cost. The energy inside me is unstable. If I use too much of it, or if someone tries to extract it forcefully, it could kill me." Cal swore under his breath. This situation just kept getting worse. Not only was he being hunted by professional killers, but he was also responsible for protecting an alien princess who doubled as a ticking cosmic bomb. Great. Just then, one of the mercenary ships fired a missile that exploded dangerously close to their hull. The impact sent Asterisk, the iron pedal Asterisk, spinning out of control, throwing both Cal and Lyra against the cockpit walls. Sparks flew from the console as warning lights flashed red. "We can't keep this up," Cal yelled, wrestling with the controls to stabilize the ship. "We need a plan, and fast." Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with determination. "Let me help," she said firmly. "I may not have full control over my powers, but I can try to shield us." Before Cal could protest, Lyra closed her eyes and raised her hands. A soft hum filled the cabin, growing louder until it resonated through every inch of the ship. Outside, a translucent barrier of shimmering light enveloped Asterisk, the iron pedal Asterisk, deflecting incoming fire and creating a temporary safe zone. The mercenaries faltered, clearly unprepared for such a display. For a few precious moments, Cal had breathing room. He seized the opportunity, piloting the ship into a narrow gap between two massive asteroids where the larger vessels couldn't follow. When they finally emerged on the other side, the pursuers were nowhere to be seen, at least for now. Cal slumped back in his seat, exhaling deeply. "That was insane," he muttered, glancing at Lyra. "You okay?" She nodded weakly, though her face was pale and beads of sweat dotted her forehead. "I'll recover," she said softly. "But we can't stop running forever." "No kidding," Cal replied dryly. He glanced at the navigation screen, plotting their next move. They needed somewhere safe to regroup. But in this part of space, safety was a rare commodity. Still, there was one place he knew might offer temporary refuge: an abandoned research station hidden deep within a volatile nebula. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than nothing. As Cal set a course for the station, Lyra rested her head against the seat, exhaustion etched across her features. Despite everything, Cal felt a flicker of admiration for her resilience. Whatever challenges lay ahead, one thing was certain: he wasn't going to let her face them alone. "You saved us back there," he said after a moment, his tone softer than usual. "Thanks." Lyra smiled faintly, her glowing eyes meeting his. "And you saved me first," she whispered. "We're even." For the first time in years, Cale felt something he hadn't dared to feel in a long while. Hope. The abandoned research station loomed ahead like a ghost ship frozen in time. Its skeletal structure floated silently within the swirling colors of the volatile nebula, half buried in cosmic dust and debris. Cale guided Asterisk, the iron pedal Asterisk, into the station's crumbling docking bay, his eyes scanning for any signs of danger. The place looked dead. No power, no life support. But that didn't mean it was empty. Space had a way of hiding secrets, especially in places forgotten by time. As they stepped onto the station's cold, metallic floor, Lyra wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the warmth of her glowing skin. "This place feels wrong," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the eerie creaks of the decaying structure. "You're telling me," Cale replied, adjusting the settings on his plasma cutter. He kept it close, just in case. "Stay close. We don't know what's lurking here." They moved cautiously through dimly lit corridors, their footsteps echoing against the walls. The air smelled stale, tinged with the faint metallic scent of rust. Flickering holographic displays lined the halls, their images fragmented and distorted. Most showed data logs or schematics, but one caught Lyra's attention, a map of constellations overlaid with strange symbols that matched those on her forehead. "This is it," she whispered, running her fingers over the display. Her touch activated something, and the screen flared to life, projecting a series of cryptic messages in her native language. She read them aloud haltingly, translating fragments as she went. "It speaks of a prophecy, a bridge between worlds. Someone called the outsider." Cale frowned, leaning against the wall. "An outsider? That doesn't sound good." Lyra turned to him, her glowing eyes wide with urgency. "It talks about someone not of my world who will help restore balance, or bring destruction. I think it might be talking about you." Cale raised an eyebrow. "Me? Why would some ancient alien prophecy care about a washed-up scavenger like me?" "I don't know," Lyra admitted, her voice trembling. "But ever since I met you, things have started changing. The energy inside me, it responds to you. It's like we're connected somehow." Before Cale could respond, the station trembled violently, nearly knocking them off their feet. Lights flickered, and a low guttural hum filled the air. Shadows danced along the walls, shifting unnaturally. Then came the whispers, soft, indistinct voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. "Who's there?" Cale demanded, raising his plasma cutter. His heart pounded as the temperature dropped suddenly, frost forming on the walls. "It's them," Lyra whispered, clutching her chest. "The spirits of this place. They've been waiting." Waiting for what? Cale didn't get a chance to ask. A figure materialized before them. An apparition made of swirling light and shadow. Its face was featureless, yet its presence radiated authority. It spoke without words, its message resonating directly in their minds. "Asterisk, beware, mortals. The path you tread holds great peril. To meddle in the affairs of stars is to court Cheo's asterisk." Cale swallowed hard, lowering his weapon slightly. "We're not looking for trouble," he said aloud, though he wasn't sure if the spirit could hear him. "We just need answers." The apparition tilted its head, studying them. "Asterisk answers carry their own burdens. Are you prepared to bear them?" Asterisk. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "I am. My people are counting on me." The spirit hesitated, then gestured toward the holographic display. More symbols appeared, forming a map of the galaxy. At its center was a pulsing red dot, her homeworld. "Asterisk, the key lies there. But beware. Sacrifice will be demanded of both of you." Asterisk. With that, the apparition vanished, leaving behind an oppressive silence. Cale let out a shaky breath, glancing at Lyra. "You still sure about this? Sounds like we're walking straight into a suicide mission." Lyra nodded, determination shining in her gaze. "If it means saving my people, And maybe yours too. Then yes, I'm sure. Kale sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. All right, princess. Let's see where this crazy ride takes us. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, not just by the spirits of the station, but by something far older and more powerful. Whatever awaited them next, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. After leaving the haunted research station, Kale and Lyra set course for a bustling trade hub known as Ecliptica Prime *. It was a chaotic sprawl of ships, markets, and mercenaries, a place where secrets were bought and sold like cheap trinkets. Kale hoped to find allies here, someone who could help them navigate the dangers ahead. But he also knew that trust was a rare commodity in places like this. Everyone had an agenda, and betrayal often came wrapped in friendly smiles. Their first stop was a dingy cantina tucked into the shadowy underbelly of the station. The air smelled of stale alcohol and burnt grease, and the patrons ranged from grizzled spacers to shady smugglers eyeing newcomers with greedy stares. Kale approached a wiry man named Joran Vex, a former contact from his scavenging days. Joran was slimy but reliable. For the right price. Cal Voss. Joran greeted him with a sly grin, leaning back in his chair. Long time no see. What brings you to my neck of the galaxy? I need information, Kale said bluntly, sliding a small credit chip across the table. And maybe some backup if things go south. Joran pocketed the chip without hesitation, his sharp eyes flicking toward Lyra, who stood quietly behind Kale. Who's the glowing gal? New partner. Just keep your questions to yourself, Kale growled, lowering his voice. I'm looking for someone who can get us safe passage through hostile territory. Can you help or not? Joran smirked, tapping his fingers on the table. Depends on how deep your pockets are, and how much heat you're bringing down on yourself. He leaned closer, his tone turning serious. Word travels fast around here. People are talking about a fugitive princess carrying some kind of cosmic payload. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Kale stiffened, his hand instinctively moving toward his plasma cutter. If you're thinking of selling us out, think again. Joran raised his hands defensively, though his grin never faltered. Relax, friend. I didn't say anything to anyone, yet. His words hung in the air like a threat. Before Kale could respond, chaos erupted outside. The cantina doors burst open, and armed mercenaries stormed in, their weapons trained on Kale and Lyra. At their head stood Captain Soren Drake, his scared face twisted into a cruel smile. Well, well, he drawled, stepping forward. Looks like we found our runaway princess. Kale cursed under his breath, realizing too late that Joran had betrayed them. You son of a... Save it, Joran interrupted, shrugging nonchalantly. Business is business, Kale. No hard feelings. Lyra stepped forward, her glowing form radiating defiance despite the odds stacked against them. You won't take me without a fight, she declared, her voice steady. Drake chuckled darkly. Oh, I was hoping you'd say that. With a snap of his fingers, his men opened fire. Kale reacted instantly, shoving Lyra behind an overturned table as blaster bolts tore through the cantina. Patrons screamed and scattered, diving for cover. Amid the chaos, Kale grabbed a nearby bottle of liquor and hurled it at one of the mercenaries, shattering it against his helmet. The distraction gave him enough time to grab Lyra's hand and make a break for the exit. They sprinted through the crowded corridors of Ecliptica Prime *, dodging patrols and narrowly avoiding capture. But they couldn't outrun everyone. As they reached the docking bay, Drake cornered them, his weapon aimed squarely at Cal's chest. It's over, Drake sneered. Hand her over, or die trying. Lyra stepped in front of Kale, shielding him with her body. Her eyes burned with resolve as she whispered, Run, please. No, Kale replied firmly, gripping her shoulder. We stick together. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. The symbols on Lyra's forehead flared brightly, releasing a surge of energy that knocked Drake and his men off their feet. Seizing the opportunity, Kale pulled Lyra aboard Asterisk, the Iron Petal Asterisk, and launched into space, leaving the stunned mercenaries behind. As they escaped into the void, Lyra collapsed into Kale's arms, her strength nearly spent. "Why do you keep risking everything for me?" she asked weakly. Kale looked at her, his expression softening. "Because you're worth it," he said simply. And for the first time, he truly believed it. The chase resumed with a vengeance. Captain Drake's fleet pursued Asterisk, the Iron Petal Asterisk, relentlessly, their ships cutting through the void like predators on the hunt. Kale pushed his aging freighter to its absolute limits, weaving between asteroid fields and dense clouds of cosmic debris. The ship groaned under the strain, its systems flickering dangerously as warning alarms blared incessantly. Lyra sat silently in the co-pilot's seat, her hands gripping the armrests so tightly her knuckles glowed faintly beneath her shimmering skin. She hadn't said much since their narrow escape from Asterisk Ecliptica Prime Asterisk, but Kale could see the weight of guilt pressing down on her. Every time they narrowly avoided destruction, her expression grew darker, as if she believed this chaos was entirely her fault. "We can't keep running forever," Kale muttered, glancing at the navigation screen. "They're too close." "I know," Lyra replied softly, her voice tinged with resignation. "But there's one place we might stand a chance, a volatile nebula up ahead. It's unpredictable, dangerous, but it could give us an edge." Kale nodded grimly. He knew what she meant. Navigating such a treacherous area would be risky, even suicidal, but it was their only shot. With a deep breath, he adjusted the controls and steered Asterisk, the Iron Petal Asterisk, toward the swirling mass of colors and energy. As they entered the nebula, the view outside became surreal. Streams of radiant gas twisted and danced around them, casting eerie hues across the cockpit. The enemy ships followed, undeterred by the danger. Blaster fire erupted all around them, forcing Kale to perform increasingly desperate maneuvers to evade destruction. Sparks flew from the control panel as another volley struck their shields, pushing them closer to failure. "They're not letting up," Kale shouted, sweat dripping down his face as he wrestled with the controls. "Lyra, now would be a good time for one of your tricks." Lyra closed her eyes, focusing intently. Her body began to glow brighter, the symbols on her forehead pulsing with intense light. A wave of energy surged outward, creating a temporary barrier that deflected incoming fire. But the effort took its toll. She slumped back in her seat, visibly weakened. "Don't overdo it," Kale warned, his concern evident despite the chaos. "We need you alive more than we need fancy shields." "I'll be fine," Lyra whispered, though her trembling hands suggested otherwise. She forced herself upright, determination etched across her features. "Just get us close enough." "To what?" Kale asked sharply, dodging another barrage of shots. Lyra pointed to a massive cluster of unstable energy floating within the heart of the nebula. It's a natural phenomenon, a collapsing star fragment. If we lure them into it." Kale understood immediately. It was a gamble, but it might work. With renewed focus, he piloted Asterisk, the Iron Petal Asterisk, toward the glowing anomaly, drawing the pursuing ships closer. The mercenaries, blinded by greed and arrogance, followed without hesitation. As they neared the fragment, Kale made his move. He activated the ship's emergency thrusters, pulling away just as the collapsing energy unleashed a cataclysmic explosion. The shockwave engulfed the mercenaries' fleet, tearing their ships apart in a blaze of light and fire. For a moment, silence filled the cockpit as the aftershock dissipated. Kale let out a shaky breath, leaning back in his seat. Did we actually pull it off?" Lyra nodded weakly, relief washing over her face. "For now." But their victory was short-lived. As the dust settled, Lyra doubled over, clutching her chest. The symbols on her forehead dimmed, then flared erratically. "Kale," she gasped, her voice barely audible. "Something's wrong." Cale turned to her, panic rising in his chest. "What is it? What's happening?" "It's the energy inside me," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's destabilizing. I don't have much time left." "No," Cale said firmly, grabbing her hand. "You're not dying on me. Not after everything we've been through." Lyra managed a faint smile, her glowing eyes meeting his. "You've already done more than anyone ever has for me. Thank you." Cale shook his head, refusing to accept defeat. "Not yet. We're going home. To your homeworld. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." With that, he set a course for the coordinates etched into the ancient map. For the first time in years, Cale felt truly alive and determined to fight for something greater than himself. The journey to Lyra's homeworld was fraught with tension. Every hour brought her closer to collapse, the energy within her growing more unstable by the minute. Cale did everything he could to keep her comfortable, but there was no denying the inevitable. Her once vivid glow had dimmed, and the symbols on her forehead flickered erratically, as if struggling to hold on. When they finally arrived, the sight of her planet took Cal's breath away. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen, a world bathed in soft, golden light, its surface dotted with crystalline structures that shimmered like stars fallen to Earth. But beneath the beauty lay scars of devastation. Craters marred the landscape, and sections of the glowing terrain were darkened, lifeless. This was a world on the brink of ruin, just like Lyra herself. Cale landed the iron petal asterisk, near one of the largest crystal formations, where ancient ruins hinted at a forgotten ritual site. Lyra stepped out unsteadily, her eyes wide with awe and sorrow. "This is it," she whispered, "the heart of my world." Together, they followed the map's guidance deeper into the ruins. The air hummed with latent energy and strange echoes. Whispers of those who had come before filled the silence. At the center of the site stood a massive obelisk, etched with the same symbols that adorned Lyra's forehead. As she approached, the obelisk began to glow, resonating with her presence. "It's time," Lyra said softly, turning to Cale. "I need you to help me activate the core." Cale hesitated, his heart pounding. "What happens after? Will it heal you?" Lyra shook her head, avoiding his gaze. "It will restore balance to my world, but not without cost. The energy inside me will merge with the planet's spirit. I won't survive." "No," Cale snapped, stepping closer. "There has to be another way. You've sacrificed enough already." Lyra placed a trembling hand on his arm, her touch warm despite her fading strength. "This is my destiny, Cale. My people need this. And so does yours. If we don't stop the chaos spreading across the galaxy, countless worlds will suffer." Cale clenched his fists, torn between anger and despair. He wanted to argue, to find some loophole that would let them both walk away. But deep down, he knew she was right. This wasn't just about saving her. It was about something far greater. "Then let me stay with you," he said firmly. "Until the end." Tears welled up in Lyra's eyes, but she nodded. Together, they activated the obelisk, channeling the unstable energy within her into the planet's core. The process was excruciating for Lyra. Her body trembled violently as waves of golden light erupted from the obelisk, bathing the ruined landscape in warmth and vitality. Dead zones sprang back to life, and the sky above cleared, revealing a brilliant sun. Through it all, Cale held her hand tightly, refusing to let go. When the final surge of energy passed, Lyra collapsed into his arms, her glow nearly extinguished. She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Will you abandon me, human?" Cale shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "Never." Her lips curved into a faint smile, and then she was gone, her body dissolving into a cascade of golden particles that merged with the planet's renewed essence. For a long moment, Cale sat alone amidst the now thriving ruins, overwhelmed by grief and gratitude. Though Lyra was gone, Her sacrifice had saved not only her world, but also offered hope for humanity's future among the stars. As he prepared to leave, a gentle breeze carried her voice one last time. "Thank you, Cale, for everything." And though she was no longer there, Cale knew their bond would endure, a testament to courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable connection between two souls from different worlds.